So I'm moving over to our guest speaker now. And I just want to say one thing, and that is I've changed my background to a massive picture of the world because I think Chumani Xotyeni takes on the world in multiple ways. So our guest speaker this evening, and please correct me if I pronounce it wrong, is Mr. Chumani Xotyeni. He's going to be speaking to us on entrepreneurship amongst township entrepreneurs. I said earlier that the management of people, which is in Regan's area, is so important. But I think that when I look at somebody like you, Chumani, there is no question in my mind that besides all the qualifications that you hold and the experience that you have, you are someone that certainly manages technology, innovation, and people in a systemic way as a progressive development practitioner. And in your 20 years of senior level experience, I can honestly say that you have tackled almost everything in the private and public sector, from military to welfare to health to education, water, sanitation, even election management, in local governments, in NGOs, in business for profit. And I think that there is no one better who could have a better understanding of how we're desperately in need of co-creating and finding ways to better township entrepreneurship. We've done a lot of work at Vinci in terms of looking at some of the SMEs and how we can sort of leverage this. And it always comes down to the fact that people have brilliant ideas, but they're unable to implement them. And I think with your sound knowledge and understanding of the national systems of innovation, your government policy legislation, I mean, your levels around anti-corruption, integrity, ethics, etc., is something that, and that's coupled with your management of people, is something that would hold this country in unbelievable stead. And you are certainly a leader that we are honored has joined us today. And I think the fact that you are so exposed to public service legislation and the municipality acts and regulations around those areas, but also social and environmental policies, which often impact townships even more so, is something quite remarkable. But for me, the part that I would say that I value so much is that when I look at what we value at Vinci, it is just you shining through. I mean, this absolute curiosity that you harness, your ability to place such value on inclusivity towards, as we focus on Madiba's legacy of just, diverse, transformational, inclusive societies. And then your ability to co-create and influence the co-creation of sustainable societies is an absolute gift as an agile, aligned, and engaged leader. And you do all of this while being completely transdisciplinary. So looking at things like problem probing, decision making, etc. So it is an absolute honor for me to introduce you, and I thank you.
Thanks very much, Dr. Mala Konin. And I must say, it's my first time on someone to talk about me. I'm always do not hear people talking about me. Thanks very much for that impressive introduction. I'm humbled to be given this opportunity to share with all of you the findings of my study, because I believe that it augurs well with my philosophy, that knowledge is primarily a factor that clearly distinguish the human race from the animals. So it is quite critical then, therefore, that whatever you have discovered, whatever you have found, you must share with other human beings so that you can improve human beings. Having said that, in this regard, then, I would like really to thank Professor H.B. Klopper for facilitating my participation in this platform. Thank you very much, Prof. The title of my study, as you will see on the screen, as it has been introduced, is that when you want to eat an elephant, you must try to eat it into bits and pieces so that you can bite at least and then digest so that you can continue, other than tackling it, because the title itself is quite broad. As other people who understand what is entrepreneurship is all about and what a township are. Because basically only on the entrepreneurship on itself, you can actually have a long talk, and then also on the townships, the original of townships, you can do that. But I decided that probably to attempt this is to look at the township entrepreneurial behavior in terms of creativity and the need for achievement. And then take the case of the city of Tshwane, meaning that the study was conducted in the city of Tshwane. Now, how I'm going to traverse in this is that we'll like to talk about first your overview of the study, what was the study about, and then we'll deal with the problem statement, and then I will deal with the main research questions, and then I'll deal with the methodology, and I'll deal with the results analysis, and I will deal with findings, and then recommendations and conclusions. And then that's how we are going to traverse. So basically, I guess is that the aim of the study was to assess the level of congruence or differentiation in the understanding of the concept of entrepreneurship between township entrepreneurs, policymakers, and formal business owners in the city of Tshwane. The study then a sample of 202 township entrepreneurs from the city of Tshwane, that is SMA database, and 33 formal business owners from the Capital City Business Forum database of members, and 21 policymakers in the entrepreneurship sector, people who are working with CEDA, Department of Small Business, and local economic development in the city of Tshwane. But the total respondents were 256. The study then was a descriptive cross-sectional quantitative survey design was used to assess whether the township entrepreneurs, formal business owners, and policymakers have the same conceptual understanding of entrepreneurship and the level to which the correspondence exists in their understanding. And then we continue is that the significance between the three stakeholders were tested utilizing ANOVA while determining correspondence in understanding by proportions of the stakeholders were tested utilizing K-means cluster analysis. Two of the proposed entrepreneurships, which are innovativeness and results, which means needs for achievement, were confirmed and validated by the study. The result of the study may contribute to the development of common understanding of the concept of entrepreneurship by all stakeholders that could assist to improve the competitiveness of township entrepreneurs in the mainstream of the economy in South Africa and the world. The study, therefore, proposes that the ecosystem of SMMEs and entrepreneur programs in South Africa must include role models, coaching, mentoring, inculcating these two entrepreneurial attributes to the township entrepreneurs, meaning that it must be something that it is actually promoted. It must be something that people are nurtured into understanding these two attributes, which is your creativity and innovation and a need for achievement. And I think earlier on, there was this discussion about the need for creativity to do things differently, to try and test and experiment. The literary reviews then therefore covered some of the authors. I'm not going to go through the authors themselves, but I'm just going to say what the literary reviewer found. The South African government has enforced varied methods to encourage entrepreneurship and small businesses while not successful. It means that all the effort that has been made to promote SMMEs has not delivered on the desired results. South Africa has a very high unemployment rate, low economic growth, highly unequal and dismissal total entrepreneurial activity rate, with really political, socio-economic challenges, and that are a threat to the national economy. One can just say probably one of the things that we've just seen could be probably as a result of that. And the more scientific studies focused on following individual characteristics and traits in developed countries and business practices of enterprises, owners, and managers in isolation of their broader social context, that is in the township situation. Thus, ensuring the intervention supported these studies were therefore inefficient. That is what the literature says. Therefore, when we look at these two attributes, we look at the creativity and innovation. Creativity, then, what we adopted for this study was that creativity is the thinking of recent things, the flexibility to adapt, to develop new ideas, and to find new ways of viewing issues and opportunities. And whereas innovation is doing new things, the flexibility to use artistic solutions to those issues, opportunities, and life. It is also, innovation is occupied with making a brand new enterprise that fills a spot left within the market by introducing new merchandise, new production strategies, making new markets or new sources to provide. Then the next attribute was the need for achievement or result orientation is a highly propensity for success. Have like for accomplishment, robust confidence and freelance problem-solving skills, and we are preferring things that are defined by moderate risk, follows up of the results and feedback, and also the acceptance of individual responsibilities. Basically, these are what we think that are the key attributes for success in entrepreneurship that need to be inculcated in the township. So the problem statement then is, the concept of entrepreneurship has not been well researched and that it is less understood, as I indicated, we have seen in some of the literature review. Unfortunately, for the purpose of this presentation, I could not list all the relevant authors that they talked about this aspect. Therefore, the scope of knowledge of South African township environment is limited. It is unknown whether the township entrepreneurs have constant behavioral thought of entrepreneurship as the same as policymakers and formal business owners. Then we move to the main research question. What we try to understand is, how does the behavioralist conceptualization of entrepreneurship differentiate between township entrepreneurs, policymakers, and formal business owners in the city of Tshwane? The two investigative questions were, do policymakers and formal business owners differ from township entrepreneurs in their understanding of creativity and innovation? Two, do policymakers and formal business owners differ from the township entrepreneurs in their understanding of the result orientation, or what we called need for achievement? The methodology then that we use in the study, it is called, the methodology adopted is a descriptive cross-sectional quantitative survey design. The descriptive method was used to describe the population and the phenomenon studied. The cross-sectional design was used because it permits a researcher to collect data from a sample drawn from a population or a representative set at the time of conducting the study. The quantitative methodology was adopted because it permitted the researcher to look at connections between the variables and would best apply to the present analysis the drawback. The survey design was used to assess the alignment or misalignment of understanding the concept of entrepreneurship by the township entrepreneurs, formal business owners, and policy makers when conducting the study. A structural questionnaire was prepared, distributed, and collected from the township entrepreneurs in their business premises and workshops conducted by the municipality officials of the Department of Local Economic Development. And formal business questionnaires were distributed and collected in their own offices, while the questionnaires for policymakers were distributed through their offices, office head, because the protocol in the government in South Africa. And then the correspondents were required to tick and mark and assign the value to the statement in the questionnaire. And then this field work was conducted between March and August 2019. The cross-tabulation then was applied to describe the business type, geographical location, gender, level of education, ethnicity, and age. The study population consisted, therefore, as I said earlier on, of that number and where they were coming from. I'm not going to repeat that. The convenience sample technique was applied, and the three sub-samples were selected as indicated above. Therefore, the data was captured on the Excel spreadsheet from where it was analyzed with IBM SPSS Statistics 21 software. A factor analysis, including a principal component of factor analysis and Kaiser-Fairmax factor analysis, was performed to identify valid factors for further analysis. To determine the three groups of respondents, the township differ in terms of their contribution to entrepreneurs, was a test conducted to test the hypothesis. The cluster analysis then, lastly, was conducted to identify clusters of township entrepreneurs that characterize entrepreneurship according to the distinct characteristics. The analysis assisted the researcher to determine the dominant characteristic features of entrepreneurship within the township entrepreneur subcycle. To test for validity, the researcher conducted a round-robin exercise on the questionnaire with others acquainted with the topics like your experts, that is your lecturers and everyone, policymakers, supervisors, to obtain inputs on scales and comprehensiveness on items. Then one of the issues then that we did was to the researcher corrected the mistakes and typing errors found from the questionnaires. That is most significant because sometimes people miss when you do the analysis that there were some mistakes in terms of maybe a sign, instead you don't understand what the sign is supposed to mean or which circle it is. The result analysis. I'm not going to read everything in terms of the result analysis, just to say that the respondent qualification, there's a difference, but I will say what is the issue. The number of respondents with a higher qualification than grade 12 was 13%, which is slightly higher than the consensus of data of 23.4% on the city of Cape Town in terms of the statistics, meaning that what we found was that the educational level of the township entrepreneurs was higher than if you compare it with the states SA as given. Therefore, the sample profile demographic slightly favored the more educated entrepreneurship views than the average township entrepreneur, meaning that we might have to analyzing those people who attended those sessions, but they were highly educated than the ordinary entrepreneurs in the township. And the analysis revealed that the majority of the language in terms of the language in Tswana is actually people, they speak Sepedi. And then it means then therefore, most of the people who are township entrepreneurs, they speak that language. And then secondly, you'll find that the most policymakers were speaking Setswana and Sepedi. And remind you, all formal business people were speaking English and Afrikaans. Therefore, the most township entrepreneurs were speaking home language was Setswana, while also the policymakers were also speaking Tswana. But the distinct thing was that the most formal business owners were speaking Afrikaans, which is in line with the Stats SA 2011. Again, the issue is that if you look in terms of the majority of group of females and males, most females spoke Setswana and Sepedi, and most males spoke Sepedi and Sezulu. Therefore, the highest number of home language of the respondents ranges from Sepedi and Tswana, and then the respondents correspond then with the states. It reveals that the highest number of females have qualification ranging from grade 9 and the certificate, while the highest number of males have qualification ranging from grade 11 and other and bachelor degrees. So therefore, in the study, the males seem to be highly educated than females, which we are saying that sometimes it does not reflect what it is states as a revelation. The hypothesis testing on creativity and innovation, there were values larger than that. I'm not going to go to that as well for the sake of this. I'm going to highlight what it means. It means then, therefore, what we have given there. It means the researcher accepts that there is no significant conceptual difference between township entrepreneurs, formal business owners, and policymakers regarding innovation and creativity. However, there were also lower values that actually entrepreneurs may marry their creativity ideas with business proposal, action, and structure. This means that the researcher rejects that there is a significant conceptual difference between the township and formal businesses into that. Therefore, also when we tested the hypothesis then, but that there were values that are higher than 0.5, what does that mean? Whatever we do, the analysis was that this means the researcher accepts that there's no significant difference between the township in terms of the understanding of the concept of a need for treatment. But there were other significant differences in terms of when you go to sub groups. And the cluster analysis then was done to really look at that. And then also what does it mean then is that most township entrepreneurs showed higher averages between that, in that entrepreneurs married their ideas with people's action and structure by doing. However, the most important thing is that township entrepreneurs show lower average on improving products and services and activities involving radical discontinuous change. The finding then corresponds with the finding of scholars, like we name them, that they said that. And then also, the other aspect is that in respondents, they showed a lower average between 3.36 to 4.1, that they view the need for achievement as slightly not important. And then this demonstrates that township entrepreneurs have low regard for commitment to action, entrepreneurial performance, achievement, entrepreneurial role, overcoming obstacles, and engaging in the instrumental activities necessary for the venture. These findings then corresponds with some of the authors written in here. And then generally then, therefore, if we now come to the issues, that what are the findings? The study reveals that there is no significant difference among the three stakeholders in the understanding of the concept of entrepreneurship. This could be as a result that the study was conducted in the urban Tshwane, where the population could be better educated. It could be as well that this study was conducted almost 25 years after the democratic dispensation, in which the democratic government prioritized the promotion of SMEs and entrepreneurship, and that the racial education system, where the content of education was different from different racial groups, was abolished. So, however, the cluster analysis conducted in the study reveals significant difference among the three stakeholders of some independent variables in the question of the two entrepreneurial behaviors. Township entrepreneurs and policy makers share similar views about the understanding of the concept of entrepreneurship, more distinct from the formal business owners. The major finding of the study is that township entrepreneurs do not improve products or services in their enterprises. The study also reveals that township entrepreneurs view the entrepreneurial process and entrepreneurial performance as not important. This demonstrates that township entrepreneurs have low regard for commitment to action, entrepreneurial performance, achievement, and entrepreneurial role, overcoming obstacles, and engaging in the instrumental activities necessary for the venture's success. Although this was not the aim of the study revealed that township entrepreneurs' behavior was not congruent with the understanding of the entrepreneurial concept. It would have been therefore expected that if the township entrepreneurs hold similar views with the formal businesses owners on the understanding of entrepreneurship, they would have established similar growing enterprises. Then what we are recommending is that the policymakers who develop and support entrepreneurial programs and SMEs should have some entrepreneurial experience to act as role models, as coaches and mentors to develop to township entrepreneurs and SMEs in general. Then for further studies, it's needed to determine whether the behavior of the township entrepreneurs affect their understanding of entrepreneurship. One can suggest that a research question would be, why township entrepreneurs do not start enterprises that grow similar to those that are started by formal business owners? Because the understanding says that they have the same understanding, but they don't do the businesses that are done. In conclusion, the study then therefore was adopted what is called the EBI, that is Entrepreneurship Behavior Inventory. There was the inventory that was developed, and it was verified, it was validated. So we adopted it and using the study to establish the level of congruence and differentiation in understanding the concept of entrepreneurship between these three stakeholders. And then the study then therefore we added these three attributes that can nurture entrepreneurship: your mentorship and your role models and coaching, which is considered as an effective and objective instrument for nurturing entrepreneurial behavior. The researcher did not only just test the hypothesis gathered, as much data as possible to prove the hypothesis one way or another by ANOVA. The researcher went further and performed a post-output to net 10 3 ANOVA tests to determine which differs on the two entrepreneurial attributes between the township entrepreneurs, formal business owners, and the policymakers. Furthermore, the researcher performed the key means cluster analysis in an attempt to identify relatively homogeneous groups based upon the two entrepreneurial behavior attributes. Major finding of the study is that township entrepreneurs do not improve and sell products and services in their enterprises. The study recommends that policymakers who develop and support entrepreneurs and SMEs should have some entrepreneurial experience to act as role models, coaches, mentors, and entrepreneurs and SMEs in general. Lastly, I think I'd like to leave with this quote, just maybe to put into context what I've been saying. Entrepreneurship is arguably the single most powerful force to create economic and social stability because it is an opportunity-centered and rewards only for talent and performance and could care less about religion, gender, skin color, social class, national origin, and the like. It enables people to pursue and realize their dreams, to falter and to try again, and to seek opportunities that match who they are, what they want to be, and how and where they want to live. This quote is from Timmons and Spinelli, New Venture Creation and Approach of the 21st Century. And having said that, thank you very much for the opportunity. Diabulela,
much appreciated. And if we can look in the direction of Lita, just to give us a summary on her view from a visual side as she's been listening to.
So very quickly, here is your visual summary. We spoke about the values, that we are insatiably curious. Marla spoke about what would we do if you were a president for the day. We spoke about schooling. We spoke about consolidating the money. And we spoke about structural reform, getting the kids back to school. And then Regan spoke about her story around the school in Alex, that remarkable transformation, the story that needed to be told, and the fact that we should be able to apply the learnings to other schools. She spoke about her data collection. She spoke about the quality constructs. You can see the detail in there. I'm not going to go through that into too much detail. And then Chumani spoke about entrepreneurship around township entrepreneurs. The main outcome that I've got from there was in terms of innovation and the need for results orientation. That's critical if we talk about entrepreneurship, but it seems as if entrepreneurs are not really focusing on innovation or on improvement or focus on results. It is not congruent with their understanding of entrepreneurship, and that's really what we need to focus on going forward, because entrepreneurship will enable people to realize their dreams. That's how we change this country. So very, very quickly, that is your visual summary.
Lita, as always, your talent is remarkable. I see there are people commenting about how fascinating the study was as well. I think it is really something fascinating. So I wanted to ask a question that was asked earlier, which is, do you believe that this could work in multiple townships regardless of where the township is situated? Because you did speak quite a lot to the fact that it was in Tshwane. Do you believe that this could work in perhaps even more rural township areas, etc.?
Thanks very much, Doc, for that. The sample we did in Tshwane was actually, we looked at the township in Tshwane. We found that township in Tshwane, they represent the majority of the township in South Africa. For example, if you take Mamelodi, it's the oldest, and you take Winterveld, is relatively semi-rural, and if you take Soshanguve, it's quite huge. So if you look in terms of South African scenario, is that you'll find that each big city or small town is got a township around it. And then the feature of these townships are that is predominantly one typical group of people, meaning that if it's a township of Africans, when I say Black Africans, will be that in the majority, there will be less of other racial groups in it. And that also, they will be also in a similar position in terms of the distance from the main city. And then also in terms of the Winterveld, is that is semi-rural, and therefore it means if you look at the rural community of South Africa, you will find that there are similarities as much as there might be differences. But also in terms of that, if you take all the educational systems of most of the Africans, pre-1994, all of them, they were subjected to the same type of education which was actually specifically designed for them. So then therefore, if you talk about really what type of knowledge and understanding they had in terms of the broader perspective as compared to international engagement, they were limited because they were not designed to participate in this meeting. So yes, Doc, we think that if it can be introduced properly and have the role models and coaches, because it needs to be nurtured. It's not something that we can impose, because some of the problems that we do, we tend to think that we can sit somewhere and just theorize and that this thing must happen. But these things are human beings. So you need to really get into contact with human beings, because those are the people who can change. Because we're not talking about changing the infrastructure, the road, the building. We're talking about how human beings behave in terms of asking themselves to be better human beings.
And a participatory approach to development. I see, Mbuso, you've got a question?
Thank you very much. I'm just starting my question from the extract from your findings to say that township entrepreneurs have low regard for action and so on and overcoming obstacles. So that's my starting point for the question, to say, asking myself to say, did the study look into perhaps the causes of that, perhaps any barriers of entry, whether they are imaginary, structural, real, or otherwise, that are encouraging that? And in particular, I'm throwing a question at you that says, does the availability of grants have any bearing to that in some sort of way? Because we know that it can act as a motivator and a demotivator in some sort of way. And also, finally, the cost of having the business actually complying. So the cost of compliance, the cost of tax clearance, the cost of all the administrative factors. Do they have any bearing into that? Because I'm struggling to process the thought that says that people are demotivated and have low regard for overcoming obstacles. But nonetheless, it is a finding. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting question, because it's most of the time that's what you get when we deal with these issues. But let me try to say, the issue here that I was trying to look at is entrepreneurship is regarded as this vehicle for economic liberation or emancipation. So it means people must be entrepreneurial so that they can change the economic condition of their country. So that therefore, it does have a specific definition. What does it mean? And it's got what is called entrepreneurial process. Like, for example, before you start any enterprise, you need to do your identification of an opportunity. You have to analyze the opportunity. So you have got a process that ranges about 10 steps. But what we find is that when you go deeper into the township enterprises, you will find that it's not really based on opportunity driven. It's just based on survival. That I don't have a job, then therefore what am I going to do? And also the issue that we're talking about is that if you look generally in the township, is that any business that is started, it becomes a business for next door. So what we are trying to say is that if we really look at entrepreneurship, and then we really think that entrepreneurship, it is this tool that can actually transform society and actually deal with the question of inequality, we must understand it and apply it as it is. The issue about the availability of resources like your grants, your loans, that's another issue that probably could be another discussion. And then thirdly, what we were trying to say was that we're trying to think about what is the behavior, what makes people do certain things. Because if you understand the question of the behaviorist approach, is that human beings are conditioned species. If you expose a person to an environment, and then people are influenced by an environment. But then if you contain people in a certain environment, that's why they behave in that particular way. But I mean, for the benefit of today, we didn't go down into defining what we understand by the reasoning of the township. So that's a debate for another thing, because when we talk about the holistic issues, that you cannot, under for certain conditions, perform certain things. As you know, for example, that certain or most of the Africans were not allowed to undertake certain studies. So already they were not exposed to certain things. Secondly, they were also not allowed to do certain things. They cannot go to town and work. They have to have a permit. So there were a lot of restrictions that probably could be the contributing factor, let alone the question of resources like your grants, but just the way we reason, the way we look at the problems of the world. Because also your mindset also helps you to see where there's a problem, there's an opportunity. When there's, so what we're saying is that, as we are indicated earlier in the study, that government did promote SMMEs. They put money, but actually the results are not saying that there's a money put into it. That is how I can just respond to that. Thanks.
Thanks, Chumani. I think that's a very extensive answer. And I think that one of the things as well is people don't take into account a lot of the discussions we've had today around Bantu education and the effects that actually has for generations to come. With first generation students only now starting to participate in higher education. And when people tell me that they didn't have privilege, my first question to them is, did you go to a Model C school? Did you go to a school in a suburb? Because then you did have privilege, no matter what you want to say, even if you came from a poor family. And that's why Dr. Lloyd's point earlier about getting students back into school and getting people back into school remains critical. In terms of that. So I think that's also really important. Thank you so much for your insights. And I think we'll definitely have to invite you back for the questions and various other things. And thank you for giving of your time, both you and Regan. As Sachaba, who's our chair of council, who also attended this evening, said that the mark of great leaders is the ability to understand the context in which they're operating and act accordingly, from Nelson Mandela. And he said, and obviously he's in the audience, so I'm just quoting you, Sachaba. He says, building the capacity to understand or interpret complex realities is something that the president, and I'm saying all of us, can champion for the government and for our country. And then he also said he would definitely encourage the president to attend Curiosita and perhaps take your ideas back into the sector. So thank you very much. I think it is really interesting to see the findings, and I really look forward to seeing the implementation of both of yours, different studies, etc., and just to get the insights. If any of you do have more questions, and Mbusa, I see your hand is still up. I'm not sure if it's from earlier, but if anyone does have questions, you're welcome to email. We will send Lita's graphic out after this evening. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and I hope you have a wonderful evening, and please stay safe. And really, I want to say to both Regan and Chumani, to say to you, thank you for imparting your knowledge and giving of yourself. I think that in co-creation is probably the biggest gift that you could give any of us. So thank you very much. Stay safe and take care.